The alert klaxon screamed through Lunar Command Communication Center at 0347 hours, their piercing wail cutting through the quiet hum of night shift operations. Lieutenant David Turner bolted upright from his monitoring station, his steaming coffee spilling across the console as red warning lights bathed the room in an ominous glow. The massive quantum translation matrix, a device the size of a city block buried deep beneath Luna's surface, was struggling with something it had never encountered before. "What the hell is that?" muttered Technician Billy Chen, his fingers dancing across holographic displays as alien symbols scrolled past faster than human eyes could follow. The translation software, designed to handle every known galactic language, was throwing error codes like a broken slot machine. Turner wiped coffee from his keyboard and leaned into his headset. "Admiral Mitchell to the comm center. Priority 1. He called over the intercom, his voice tight with urgency. Around him, the night shift crew scrambled to their stations. After 2 years of routine communications with friendly alien species, this was the first time the emergency protocols had ever been activated. The massive reinforced doors of the communications center slid open with a heavy thud, and Admiral James Mitchell strode through them like a man walking into battle. At 58, Mitchell had served in 3 Earth wars before humanity even knew aliens existed. His weathered face, scarred from an orbital debris accident during the Mars colonization, carried the look of a man who had seen too much death and wasn't planning to see any more without a fight. "Talk to me, Turner," Mitchell ordered, his boots echoing on the metal floor as he approached the main console. The room fell silent except for the constant hum of the quantum processors working overtime to decode the incoming signal. Turner's hand shook slightly as he activated the playback system. "Say, this came in through the deep space array about 20 minutes ago. It's been bounced through at least 6 subspace relays across 3 different sectors. The translation matrix is having trouble with it because the species is using what appears to be broken standard galactic mix with their native language." The voice that emerged from the speakers was unlike anything Turner had heard in his 5 years of monitoring galactic communications. It was crystalline and melodic, like when chimes made of pure music, but underneath the beauty was raw, primal terror that made every human in the room feel cold. "This is colony ship Harmony of the Vel-3 Republic, broadcasting on all frequencies. We are under attack by an unknown hostile force in the Kepler 442 system. Our people are dying. We have no weapons, no military forces. We are a peaceful species. Please, anyone who receives this message, we need help." The voice broke, and in the background, they could hear what sounded like crystal structures shattering, followed by screams that no translation software could make less horrible. The creatures call themselves Krovaxi. They consume worlds. They strip everything living from planets and move on like locusts made of nightmares. "Our defense fleet. We don't have a defense fleet. We never thought we would need one. They are coming for our homeworld next. Our children. Please, someone must hear this. Someone must care enough to help strangers. Please." The transmission cut to static, leaving the communication center in dead silence. Mitchell's jaw tightened as he stared at the holographic star map that materialized above the main console. The Kepler 442 system glowed red, 12 light-years from Earth, well within range of humanity's new faster-than-light drives that had been operational for only 18 months. "How long ago did this reach us?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Turner checked his readings twice before answering. 14 hours, sir. The signal's been bouncing through subspace relays across 3 sectors. Given the transmission power and the relay network coverage, every major civilization in this part of the galaxy should have received this message. And the response? Turner's face darkened as he pulled up the galactic communication logs. "Nothing, sir. Complete radio silence from the Galactic Council, the Altian Federation, the Centauri Alliance, even the Rigel Cooperative. Nobody's answering. Nobody's even acknowledging that they received the message." Mitchell studied the tactical display, his mind racing through possibilities. The Vel-3 had made first contact with Earth just 2 years ago, arriving in ships that looked more like floating art galleries and spacecraft. They had shared their crystal-growing technology in exchange for human literature and music, spending hours listening to Bach and Shakespeare with the wonder of children discovering magic. They were artists, philosophers, builders of impossible beauty who grew cities from living crystal and created sculptures that sang in harmony with solar winds. They had never developed weapons because in their corner of the galaxy, they had never needed them. So, interrupted Technician Rodriguez from the deep scanning station, I'm picking up more signals. Fragments of Crovaxi communications. The translation software is having an easier time with these. Mitchell nodded grimly. Put it through. The voice that filled the room was nothing like the musical tones of the Belfry. It was harsh, filled with clicking sounds and what could only be described as hungry anticipation. Even through the translation matrix, it made every human in the room want to reach for weapons they didn't have. The Crystal Singers called for help. The alien voice hissed with obvious amusement. Let them scream into the void. No species has ever stood against the swarm. The galaxy's soft creatures will cower in their safe systems and congratulate themselves on their wisdom in not interfering. Mitchell felt something cold and hard settle in his chest. These weren't just conquerors. They were predators who had never faced other predators, bullies who had grown fat on the fear of peaceful civilizations. He turned to Turner, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had never backed down from a fight. Get me General Hayes. Tell him to prepare the 1st Expeditionary Fleet for immediate deployment. He paused, looking back at the star map where the Kepler 442 system pulsed red like a bleeding heart. Tell him we're going to war. The sprawling docks of Lunar Station had never seen mobilization like this. The massive orbital facility, normally a peaceful hub of scientific research and interstellar trade, had transformed overnight into a war machine that would have made Earth's greatest military leaders proud. Within 6 hours of receiving the Velfrey distress call, humanity's 1st Expeditionary Fleet was becoming something the galaxy had never seen before. General Robert Hayes stood on the observation deck of the UES Retribution, watching his Marines load kinetic bombardment shells into the ship's cargo bays with mechanical precision. Each shell was the size of a small car, designed to punch through asteroid armor at speeds that would turn mountains into dust. The sight should have been routine, but Hayes knew these weapons had never been tested in actual combat against alien technology. The vessel itself told the story of human adaptability. The Retribution had been designed as a deep space exploration platform, built to carry scientists and diplomats to the far reaches of the galaxy. But human engineering had always prioritized one thing above all else, the ability to change, to adapt, to survive. What had once been botanical labs where researchers grew earth plants and alien soil now housed ammunition stockpiles. Former crew quarters designed for comfortable long-term voyages had become armories filled with weapons that most galactic species would consider barbarically effective. So, you need to see this, called out Sergeant Tom Wilson, gesturing toward a group of technicians who were installing something that looked like a cross between a cannon and a surgical instrument on the ship's hull. The engineers have been working non-stop since we got the green light. They are calling it an adaptive weapons platform. Hayes walked over to inspect the device. Chief Engineer Patricia Bell, her hands black with grease and her eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep, looked up from her work with a kind of grin that usually meant someone was about to have a very bad day. General, this beauty can analyze alien hull composition in real time and adjust its ammunition accordingly, she explained, patting the weapon like a proud parent. Whether they're using bioarmor, crystalline hulls, or quantum-hardened plating, this thing will find a way to punch through it. It was typical human thinking. Where other species might develop one perfect weapon for one specific purpose, humans created weapons that could adapt to any enemy they might face. It was the same mindset that had allowed primitive humans to survive ice ages, plagues, and predators that should have wiped them out long ago. General, we're receiving Crovaxi tactical communications, reported Captain Lisa Palmer from the bridge communication station. Palmer was humanity's leading expert in alien languages, a woman who could speak 17 different galactic dialects and understand the thought patterns behind each one. Their broadcasts are disturbing. Hayes made his way to the bridge, passing groups of Marines checking their equipment one final time. These weren't the parade ground soldiers of peacetime militaries. They were volunteers from Earth's toughest environments, former miners from the asteroid belt, security specialists from the Mars colonies, and veterans of the corporate wars that had raged in the outer system before the United Earth government had brought peace through superior firepower. The bridge of the Retribution buzzed with controlled chaos. Officers moved between stations with practiced efficiency while holographic displays showed the tactical situation updating in real time. Hayes joined Palmer at the communications console, noting the way her hand shook slightly as she adjusted the translation matrix. The alien voices that emerged from the speakers were unlike anything in the Galactic database. They were harsh and guttural, filled with clicking sounds that reminded Hayes of insects, but underneath was something else, the satisfied hunger of predators who had never been challenged. The crystal singers have called for help. One voice hissed with obvious amusement. Let them call. No species has ever stood against the swarm. We have consumed the militant hegemony, devoured the war builders of Kepler-12. These soft creatures from the outer rim will flee or surrender like all the others. Another voice joined in, dripping with contempt that needed no translation. The galactic cowards will not come. They value their own safety over others' lives. We feast tonight on crystal flesh, and tomorrow we hunt new prey among the stars. Hayes felt something cold and hard settle in his stomach. These weren't just conquerors seeking territory or resources. They were predators who had grown fat on fear, bullies who had never faced organized resistance. The galaxy's civilized species had grown soft, choosing diplomacy and withdrawal over confrontation whenever possible. But humans were different. Humans had climbed to the top of Earth's food chain not by being the biggest or strongest, but by being the most adaptable, the most persistent, and the most willing to fight when cornered. Every human in the fleet carried the genetic memory of ancestors who had faced down saber-toothed tigers, survived ice ages, and built civilizations from the ruins of natural disasters. Captain Palmer, Hayes said quietly, make sure every ship in the fleet receives those transmissions. I want everyone to understand exactly what we're dealing with. Admiral Mitchell's voice suddenly echoed through the ship's intercom system, reaching every human in the fleet. All hands, this is Admiral Mitchell. In 30 minutes, we jump to faster than light speed. We're going to save the Velfry, and we're going to show these Crovaxi why you don't threaten peaceful species when Earth is listening. Around the bridge, Hayes watched his officers straighten with pride. These were humans who had grown up on stories of their ancestors standing against impossible odds and winning through sheer stubborn refusal to give up. Remember, Mitchell continued, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had never backed down from a fight, we come from a world that tried to kill us every day for 4 billion years. We survived ice ages, asteroid impacts, supervolcano eruptions, and predators that make these Crovaxi look like house pets. We're still here. They won't be. The countdown began. Across the fleet, faster-than-light drives powered up with a sound like thunder being born. The ships that had been built for exploration and diplomacy were about to become humanity's first weapons of interstellar war. The fleet jumped to hyperspace, carrying humanity's fury toward the stars. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, and what they witnessed would haunt every crew member for the rest of their lives. The beautiful twin suns that had once illuminated a peaceful civilization now cast their light on systematic genocide. Massive organic vessels, each one the size of Manhattan, pulsed through space like diseased hearts. Bioluminescent veins ran along their hulls like infected arteries, glowing sickly green against the star field. These Crovaxi bioships sprouted weapon appendages like thorns on a nightmare rose, each one larger than Earth's biggest warships. They moved with predatory grace, surrounding the crystal habitats that had taken the Velfry centuries to grow. "Holy hell," whispered Lieutenant Rebecca Foster from her position at the tactical station, her voice barely audible above the humming of the ship's systems. The Crovaxi bioships were unlike anything in human military databases. Their hulls writhed with living weapon systems that fired streams of corrosive plasma, dissolving everything they touched. Where the alien weapons struck the Velfry crystal structures, the elegant formations that had been grown with artistic precision simply melted away like ice under a blowtorch. The crystal cities had been masterpieces of alien engineering, growing in perfect mathematical spirals that caught and reflected starlight in patterns too beautiful for human words. Now they were dissolving into cosmic dust, taking with them libraries of knowledge, art galleries that sang in solar winds, and millions of innocent lives. Escape pods drifted through space like scattered pearls, their crystalline hulls reflecting the light of the dying cities. Inside each pod, Velfry civilians waited helplessly for death, their musical voices crying out in frequencies that human ears could barely detect. The pods had no weapons, no shields, no means of defense. They were simply hoping that somehow, somewhere, someone would care enough to help. Captain Diana Ross, The fleet's senior communications officer monitored the alien chatter with growing horror. "Admiral, the Krovaxi are treating this like a hunting expedition. They are taking their time, savoring the fare. They could have finished this hours ago, but they are drawing it out." Admiral Mitchell's jaw tightened as he watched the tactical display update in real time. Each red that disappeared represented thousands of Velfrey lives snuffed out by creatures that viewed genocide as entertainment. He opened a channel to the Krovaxi fleet, his voice carrying across the void with the authority of someone who had never backed down from bullies. "This is Admiral James Mitchell of the Terran Expeditionary Force. You will cease fire immediately and withdraw from this system." The response came quickly, broadcast on all frequencies with what could only be described as alien laughter. The sound was worse than fingernails on a chalkboard, filled with the cruel amusement of predators who had never been challenged. "Humans," the alien voice hissed through the translation matrix. "We have heard whispers of your kind. Primitives from an unremarkable world on the Galactic Rim. You have 30 of your time units to flee, or you will join the Crystal Singers in extinction." Around the bridge, Mitchell's officers waited for orders. These weren't politicians or diplomats. They were military personnel who understood that sometimes the only language bullies understood was violence. Mitchell checked his chronometer and smiled coldly. 30 seconds, not 30 minutes. When the timer expires, you'll learn why Earth is classified as a death world. All ships, weapons free. Protect those escape pods. The Krovaxi had expected another civilized species, one that would negotiate, retreat, or surrender like every other galactic civilization they had encountered. Instead, they faced an enemy that had learned warfare on a planet where everything had been trying to kill everything else for 4 billion years. Human kinetic rounds, accelerated to significant fractions of light speed, punched through bioship armor like bullets through paper. The Krovaxi had never faced weapons designed by a species that had spent millennia perfecting the art of killing. Their organic hulls, evolved to resist energy weapons used by other galactic species, offered no protection against solar projectiles moving at relativistic speeds. Fighter squadrons led by Commander Jake Williams launched from the human capital ships like angry wasps from a disturbed nest. These pilots had trained in Earth's asteroid fields, dodging debris at speeds that would liquefy most alien species. They executed attack patterns that had been developed during humanity's bloodiest conflicts, adapted for three-dimensional space combat where there was no up or down, only predator and prey. The humans didn't just fight. They hunted. Damaged Krovaxi ships became cover as human fighters stalked larger prey through the debris field. Pilot Lieutenant Amy Johnson found herself using the burning wreckage of a Krovaxi bioship to mask her approach on a larger vessel, her fighter's weapons charging as she closed the distance. "Fox 2, Fox 2, she called out, launching a spread of guided missiles that had been designed to adapt their warheads based on target composition. The missiles struck the bioship's weapon clusters, turning living cannons into expanding clouds of organic debris. The Krovaxi collective consciousness, accustomed to fighting species that relied on formation flying and predictable tactics, couldn't process human combat behavior. Every human pilot fought as an individual while maintaining perfect coordination with their squadrons. It was like fighting a school of sharks that could think and plan together while each one attacked from a different angle. Within an hour, the advanced Krovaxi force was scattered across the system. Their surviving bioships fled deeper toward the inner planets, broadcasting desperate calls for reinforcement in frequencies that sounded more like screams than military communications. They had never encountered organized resistance before, and their hive minds struggled to understand enemies that refused to surrender or flee. "Admiral," reported Captain Palmer, "we're receiving a transmission from the Velfrey survivors." The crystalline voice that emerged from the speakers was filled with wonder and hope that had seemed impossible just hours before. "Humans, you came. You actually came. We thought no one in the galaxy cared enough to risk themselves for strangers." Admiral Mitchell smiled grimly as he watched the tactical displays show Krovaxi reinforcements approaching from the outer system. "We're not done yet. The main Krovaxi fleet is still incoming. But here's something they don't understand about humans. We've never learned when to quit." The main Krovaxi swarm arrived 3 days later like a living plague spreading across the stars. The sight was enough to break the spirit of most civilized species in the galaxy. Over 300 bioships filled local space, each one a nightmare of organic architecture that pulsed with alien life. These weren't just vessels. They were living creatures the size of small moons, bred for war and conquest over countless generations. Accompanying the main fleet were massive breeding worlds, planetary-sized organisms that continuously spawned new warrior creatures. The hulls of these living factories writhed with activity as fresh horrors emerged from birthing chambers, ready to join the slaughter. The fleet that had devoured 12 civilizations stretched across thousands of cubic kilometers, blotting out the light of Kepler 442's twin suns and casting the system into an artificial twilight. Lieutenant Commander Beth Harrison, monitoring the tactical displays aboard the Retribution, felt her blood run cold as the sensors struggled to catalog the approaching nightmare. "Admiral, we're reading bioship classifications we've never seen before. Some of these things are the size of Earth's moon, and they're all armed." The Krovaxi Hive Queen broadcast her ultimatum with absolute confidence, her voice carrying the arrogance of a predator that had never known defeat. The sound that emerged from the translation matrix was like listening to a spider speak, all clicks and hisses wrapped around words dripping with contempt. "Humans, you have fought well for primitives from the Outer Rim, but now you face the full might of the Swarm. Surrender, and we will grant you quick deaths instead of the slow consumption we reserve for those who dare resist us." General Hayes, commanding from the Marine assault ship UES Defiance, responded by doing something that no species in galactic history had ever attempted. Instead of retreating or negotiating, he launched his dropships directly at the enemy fleet. The sight of tiny human vessels charging toward bioships that dwarfed Earth's largest cities would have been laughable, if not for what happened next. "Marines, remember your training." Hayes broadcast to his troops as they strapped into assault pods designed to punch through starship hulls. "These things have never faced individual fighters working as a team. They think in terms of swarm consciousness and overwhelming numbers. Show them what 4 billion years of evolution on a death world produces." The Krovaxi learned their first lesson about human warfare when Marines in powered armor breached their bioships through hull punctures created by shaped charges that could crack asteroids. The assault pods, launched from human ships at maximum velocity, struck the organic hulls like armor-piercing bullets and burrowed deep into the enemy vessels before disgorging their deadly cargo. The collective consciousness of the aliens couldn't comprehend enemies that fought as individuals while maintaining perfect coordination. Human Marines moved through the organic corridors of the bioships like a virus attacking healthy cells, but a virus with military training and weapons designed to kill anything that moved. Sergeant William Davis led his squad through the writhing passages of a Krovaxi command vessel, their advanced combat suits automatically adjusting to the toxic atmosphere inside the alien ship. The corridors were alive, pulsing with veins that carried nutrient fluids and lined with walls that could sense intruders and spawn defensive organisms. "Contact front!" Davis called out as warrior forms emerged from wall sphincters like nightmarish jack-in-the-boxes. These weren't the small creatures they had faced before, but purpose-bred killers the size of Earth elephants, with armored carapaces and claws that could shred steel. Multiple hostiles, organic armor, distributed nervous system. Switch to disruption rounds. The human weapons adapted instantly, their smart ammunition analyzing the alien biology and reconfiguring to target the creature's neural clusters. The Krovaxi warriors, evolved to fight species that used energy weapons and conventional tactics, had no defense against projectiles that sought out their biological weak points with surgical precision. What should have been a boarding action turned into something else entirely. The humans weren't trying to capture the ships. They were exterminating everything inside them with methodical efficiency that would have impressed Earth's most successful pest control specialists. Admiral Mitchell, meanwhile, employed tactics that had been refined in Earth's naval academies and tested in the corporate wars of the outer solar system. He used the Krovax's own massive numbers against them, creating debris fields from destroyed bioships that channeled enemy movements into carefully prepared killing zones. The human fleet moved like a pack of wolves, using speed and coordination to isolate individual bioships and destroy them before the rest of the swarm could respond. Where the aliens expected formations and predictable maneuvers, they encountered hit-and-run tactics that had been perfected by pirates and rebels across human space. Dr. Patricia Morgan, working from her mobile laboratory aboard the science vessel UES Discovery, achieved something that would be talked about in military academies for generations. She managed to hack into the Krovax's biological communication networks, turning the aliens' greatest strength into their fatal weakness. "Admiral," she reported, her voice tight with excitement and exhaustion after 72 hours of continuous work. "I've isolated their command frequencies. Their entire fleet operates on shared biological imperatives transmitted through quantum-entangled neural networks. If I can introduce a logic virus into their communications." "Do it," Mitchell ordered without hesitation. The virus that Dr. Morgan unleashed was a masterpiece of human ingenuity, designed to exploit the very thing that made the Crovaxi so effective as conquerors. It spread through their fleet's biological networks like wildfire, corrupting the shared consciousness that allowed them to coordinate their attacks. Suddenly, bioships began turning on each other as corrupted signals convinced them that their neighbors were enemies. The perfect coordination that had made the swarm unstoppable for centuries became their downfall as human-designed chaos tore through their ranks. Ships that had worked together to destroy worlds now tore each other apart in confusion and fear. The tide of battle had turned. For the first time in their history, the Crovaxi faced something worse than defeat. They faced extinction at the hands of a species that had learned to survive by never giving up. The battle ended with something unprecedented in galactic history, the complete destruction of a Crovaxi swarm. For centuries, these nomadic devourers had been an unstoppable force, consuming 12 civilizations and leaving behind nothing but empty worlds stripped of all life. Now their broken bioships drifted through space like the corpses of ancient monsters, leaking organic fluids that crystallized in the vacuum. The few surviving Crovaxi vessels fled toward the galactic rim in panic, their hive minds shattered by the realization that they were no longer apex predators. They carried with them news that would transform the galaxy's understanding of warfare itself. Somewhere in the outer spiral arm, a species existed that fought back, and fought back hard. Admiral Mitchell stood on the bridge of the Retribution, his uniform still bearing scorch marks from the final assault. Through the massive viewing ports, he watched human engineering teams working alongside Velfrey refugees to rebuild their shattered crystal habitats. The scene should have been impossible. Two species that had known each other for barely 2 years, working together to repair damage caused by creatures that had terrorized the galaxy for generations. The Velfrey had already begun growing a memorial structure, a massive crystal formation that caught and reflected the light of their twin suns in patterns that told the story of their rescue. It would orbit their homeworld for millennia, a testament to the species that had answered their desperate call for help when the rest of the galaxy had remained silent. Chief Engineer Catherine Wells approached the Admiral, her tablet displaying reconstruction reports that bordered on miraculous. "So, the Velfrey crystal growing technology is incredible. With our construction robots and their organic architects working together, we're rebuilding their cities faster than anyone thought possible. They are teaching us how to grow structures that can repair themselves, and we're showing them how to integrate defensive systems." Mitchell nodded, watching a human construction mech carefully position a crystal seed while a Velfrey engineer sang the growth patterns that would shape it into a new habitat module. It was cooperation on a level that the galaxy had never seen before, not just trade agreements or diplomatic treaties, but actual integration of technologies and cultures. "Admiral," reported Lieutenant Rebecca Foster, "we're receiving communications from across the galaxy. The Galactic Council wants to meet with our representatives. The Altian Federation is requesting defensive treaties. The Rigel Cooperative is offering trade agreements. Every major civilization is trying to establish diplomatic contact." The communications board was lighting up like a Christmas tree with incoming messages from species that had ignored the Velfrey's distress call just weeks earlier. Now they all wanted to talk to the humans who had done what they couldn't, or wouldn't, do themselves. Mitchell walked to the tactical display where the results of their victory were still being calculated. The Crovaxi swarm had been completely destroyed, but the implications went far beyond one military engagement. Across the galaxy, other aggressive species were reconsidering their expansion plans. The news was spreading through subspace communications. Earth's Death Worlders had entered galactic politics, and they played by different rules. General Hayes joined him at the observation window, still wearing his combat armor despite the battle being over. His Marines were conducting joint training exercises with Velfrey engineers, teaching the crystalline beings basic defensive tactics while learning about their unique abilities to manipulate matter at the molecular level. "Look at that," Hayes said, pointing to a group of Velfrey youngsters who were practicing with human training weapons under the supervision of Sergeant Davis. 6 weeks ago, these people had never held a weapon in their lives. Now they are learning to defend themselves. The sight was both heartening and sobering. The Velfri were natural pacifists, but they were also intelligent enough to understand that the galaxy contained predators who viewed peace as weakness. Under human guidance, they were developing the ability to protect themselves without losing their essential nature as artists and builders. The galaxy is going to be different now, Hayes observed, watching his troops demonstrate small unit tactics to aliens who absorbed information like living computers. Word spreading about what we did here. Every bully and conqueror in known space knows there's a new player in the game, and we don't follow the same rules they're used to. The transformation was already visible in the diplomatic channels. Species that had spent decades avoiding conflict were suddenly interested in mutual defense agreements with Earth. The fear that had kept civilized worlds silent when the Velfri called for help was being replaced by hope that someone would answer if they were next. Mitchell smiled as he watched a human destroyer escort a convoy of Velfri colony ships toward their rebuilt homeworld. Good. Maybe next time someone sends out a distress call, they won't have to wait 14 hours for an answer. Maybe next time, the galaxy won't stay silent while peaceful species face extinction. A priority transmission reached them from Earth. Humanity's first official ambassador to the Galactic Council was en route, along with a diplomatic mission that would establish humanity's formal place in galactic civilization. But the real message had already been sent, written in the wreckage of Krovaxi bioships and the gratitude of saved lives. Dr. Morgan, still working in her mobile laboratory, had intercepted communications from across the galaxy. Aggressive species were withdrawing from planned conquests. Peaceful civilizations were reaching out to each other, forming mutual defense pacts. The balance of power that had kept the galaxy locked in cycles of predation and fear was shifting. Earth had announced its presence not with words or diplomacy, but with action. The species that had learned to survive on a world trying to kill them had extended that protection to others. They had proven that sometimes the only language bullies understood was overwhelming force applied with surgical precision. The Death Worlders had answered the call with fury, and the galaxy would never be the same. Peace, it turned out, was not the absence of conflict. It was the presence of those willing to fight for it. ***, the END ***.